Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Coffee Talks episode and another edition of this project that we've been doing now for 3 months. And we have a guest from the Caribbean this time. He's a three-time Olympian from Cayman Islands, and he competed in track and field in the 110 hurdles. Ronald Forbes. Welcome, Ronald, to Coffee Talks. Thank you
Hi,
for
everyone. How you doing?
Good. Thank you again for being here and being part of this project. I wanted to ask you first, how did you start practicing sport in Cayman? How was, since you were in your school, you were in Saturn House Middle School, and I believe, and then how did you start practicing? Because I believe you didn't start in track and field, you started in other sports, right?
Yeah. Sports has been a part of my life ever since I was a very young child. Of course, like any child, you run around and you play, race from one spot to the next, or point A to point B, see who can make it there the fastest. In the Cayman Islands, most kids that I know, especially my age and definitely younger than me, we start by playing football. And football is the national sport. And, you start by playing in the little pee-wee leagues by simply just running around. You can just tell, like, you're in the learning stage of learning how to play the game. And that was how I kind of started sports. It was, I wanted to join a team. I felt that, I had something to contribute. I wanted to have fun. And around the age of 8, I started with our under 9, I think it was, football team at the Trueview School. That was, grade 1 through 6, and played football for about maybe 2 years, somewhere around that time. And once I moved or in Trueview, we have on island something called Sports Day. It is a track and field competition between every primary school from grades 1 through 6 on the island, and everyone meets up one time a year to compete in track and field. And I'm not going to say that I was the most talented out there. Believe me, I took my hits, but I could pull off, maybe a bronze medal here and there. And I really didn't think anything of it. You just do what the adults tell you to do. You get on the line and you race, and that's pretty much it. Kind of made the transition into that. Transition out of that from the ages of, say, 12, when you went into middle school, which was called John Gray. That's, where I told you I was in Saturn House and I didn't like running. I just basically like hanging out with friends. And track and field kind of took off somewhere around that age of the 7th, 8th grade, where I wanted to travel. Wanted to see the world, except for Miami. That was the only place that I knew outside of, my island and my district. And at that time, I had a friend who was still one of my best friends to this day, Edward Powell, who did cricket on island, and decided to go out and to try out for the cricket team. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Fortunately, that didn't work out. I'll put it that way. And I was doing cricket and track at the same time. And eventually I started out, going to practice for track and field like 2-3 times a week. And I didn't start out by doing hurdles. I started out by actually doing discus and shot put, of all things.
So that was with Coach Kendrick Williams, right? He's the one who got you going on that, or?
Yeah. It was a different background story to how I actually got there to doing the discus and shot put, but he was responsible, or he is responsible, for introducing me into the hurdles. At that time, he was the newcoming national coach that was there. I think he came there in like 95, 96. And at that time, there were really no hurdlers. I think they had about maybe 2 or 3. It was an event that we really didn't participate or compete in too often on island. And in my personal opinion, he was on a quest to look for hurdlers. One evening during the discus and shot put practice, he had us do mobility drills of walking over hurdles. And the first time I've ever seen a hurdle in my life was a power hurdle, those small collapsible red hurdles that we kind of use for drills and everything else. And
What is a power hurdle for those who are not familiar with track and field?
it's a small collapsible hurdle that you can go all the way down to, I think, maybe 6 inches off of the ground, and it can go all the way up to 42 inches. So it's basically for practice purposes, not really for competition. If you want to introduce a young person to hurdles and what it is to actually go over and teach them the motor skills of lead leg, trail leg. So once he introduced me to the hurdles, that's how he did it. He's solely responsible for that.
And okay, and how high is the hurdle, the actual hurdle in competition?
At the senior male level, it is 42 inches. At the junior level, it is 39 inches.
Junior level until age 18 or age or
Well, once you're under 20, it is 39 inches. Once you get to the senior level, it is 42 inches.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then so after you transitioned to hurdles, you kept going, you kept practicing track and field, and then something happened at the Carifta Games. Carifta, for those who don't know, it's the track and field meet in the Caribbean. It's like a competition of track and field at the junior level, correct? Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so 2000 Carifta, where was that edition of Carifta in 2000?
The first time that I competed in Carifta was in the year 2000. It was in Grenada at the time. And you've heard about Carifta since you were very young, and you know that it is the top level junior meet in the Caribbean, where a lot of Caribbean islands come around. I wouldn't say every single one of them, but many of the Caribbean islands come together at a junior level and compete. And I wanted to make that team. I continued to practice and practice and practice and practice, and eventually I got good enough where I beat at that time the national junior record holder for the Cayman Islands to make that team. And in 2000 was where I first competed in my first major international junior competition, which was Carifta in Grenada. And my first event, oddly, was the shot put, and then the hurdles a day or two after.
How old were you, Ronald, back then?
At that time, I was just about to turn 15. So I was 14 and a lot of change, I guess.
Okay. So it's an age of transition. Definitely, it's an age that you need to pick your sport, because that's an age where you need to just specialize in a sport, I would say, no? Because then, if you play multiple sports, then you at that age is like, okay, I need to get serious on this sport. So that's why you picked track and field as well, right?
Yeah, it was a sport that, as I said, you do it when you're very young, but at that age, I came to the conclusion that it was a sport that was different than every other sport. Many other sports, especially team sports, you have to rely on, your teammate that's beside you. You have to rely on, let's just say football, for instance, the 10 other guys in the field, whatever the number should be, in order to accomplish the goal, which is to win. In track and field, it's a little bit different. I don't have to rely on anybody. It's just me and my coach most of the time. Once you can form that strong unit, you can forge your way forward. I don't have to suffer the consequences of someone not putting in 100%. What I put in, I got to take out. So that was one of the beauties of the sport that I recognized from a very young age. If I put in 100%, I got 100% back out, or at least most of the time, you got what you put, whatever you put in, you got back out. So that alone was enough to steer me in a direction where, as I said, I more or less chose track and field solely as a sport I wanted to do. Like no other sport at that point influenced me any more than track and field.
It was more under your control, as you said, like, yeah, you don't depend on someone else, but just yourself.
Yes.
And that discipline at that age, when like like when you're 14 to 20 years old, like you're like into high school with I mean multiple distractions, but then you decided to keep practicing, and you took the bus really early in the morning, right? Like 5 a.m. and then you run to the only track in Cayman Islands, it's called the Truman Bodden Sports Complex, right? That was where the track was, and it was like a mile and a half far from the bus stop. How was that? How was that story, Ronald?
All right, so once I made the transition into high school, it was clear that I was not a talented athlete. I would tell anybody that. I didn't make it off of anything called talent. It was just straight hard work. I knew at that point, from the time I got into high school, it was going to be 3 years before I was going to exit high school. At that time, in the Cayman Islands, you had a group of seniors, at least to me, that were all going off to university at the same time, and some had already gone. They had come back, I think it was a summer break or spring break, one of those, and you're hearing all of these stories of how competition in the United States was. You know, you get to compete every other week, sometimes every week, and every time that they told me how competition over in the United States was, it literally just fueled the fire in me to say, that is where I need to be. University that's the way to go. But I didn't know how to get there. I think the most that we ever mentioned university or college within my household was maybe 5 times. No one in my household graduated college. Some didn't graduate high school. So at that point, I knew that just training in the evening was not going to be sufficient. Like, I needed to train more. So I decided to literally just sacrifice it all and throw caution into the wind and just make as many sacrifices as I need to do. I got up at 4:50 in the morning, took the 5 o'clock bus down to the very last bus stop, which is at a place called Jose's gas station. That was the last place that the bus let people off. From there, I would jog from there to the Truman Bodden Sports Complex, which is about maybe a mile and a half away. And there you got, then you started to warm up, crazy as that sound. On other mornings, I would catch a ride with my coach, Kendrick Williams, from where he stayed. And then we would arrive at the track at the same time, which obviously saved me a lot of sweat and perspiration. But that was the transition I had to make in high school to literally sacrifice it all. It didn't matter what time I had to show up to practice. I showed up there. I got what I had to get done. And eventually going to university was my sole mission in life. Obviously to graduate high school, but I knew that past high school, I wanted something more.
And university, you mean like college in the US, right? That was the...
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to that time when you were training when you were waking up at 4:50 a.m. I mean, 14 years old. I mean, again, that's pretty tough to do. How many times a week were you doing that? Like
I was doing that around the age of 15.
15.
About 15, 16 years old. Definitely in my last year of high school. That was the ages when I was doing that. A lot of people, they give you odd stares, like, man, that, like, something must be wrong with them. But that's how driven I was to just make it. Because to say I wasn't going to make it on the sheer talent. I was not a talented athlete. I was just one of those that knew the value of hard work and knew that if I put in the effort, I would get a reward at the end. So it didn't matter how crazy I looked doing it. I just did what was necessary.
How many days a week were you training?
It was 6 days a week, and I would do that schedule for about 5 of those. Only on Wednesday mornings did I get a break where you only had evening practice. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you got up at 4:50 in the morning.
Yeah. Wow. No, respect. I mean, that's that age, and I mean, it's not like a team sport as well that you have when you're in a team, you get motivated by the people around you too. Okay, if he's going, I'm gonna do it for the team. But when you're on, like being that self-motivated, especially at that age, it's quite an accomplishment. So
yeah.
You said your focus was on university, and
yes.
Then you were to high school, and then what happened? Did you start recording yourself to send videos to coaches? Did someone recruit you at a track meet? how was your transition from high school to university?
This was the days before YouTube and, the social media era that we now live in. So uh, I had known of several schools through my coach at that time, said Coach Kenrick, that we were filling out applications, and say I didn't know the first thing to do on how to get into university. You were told that recruits were you could get recruited when you go to Carifta meets, and they're going to have scouts out there looking for athletes to recruit to their school. So you don't even know I didn't know what one of those looked like. So I just knew I had to run fast. And heading out of high school, one of those applications that I'd filled out, came back. It was to Knoxville College, and I finally landed a scholarship after all of those years of trying. Finally landed a scholarship. Once I made the transition out of high school, of course, for anyone that has been through that route before, you have to go to Jamaica to get a student visa. All excited, ready to start the next phase of my life, and I went to Jamaica to get the student visa, and ultimately, like we discussed, I was denied. It was crushing. It literally made me feel like all of those years of trying and getting up early in the morning and all of the sacrifice that you made was not worth it. So I quit track and field. I stopped for about maybe 3-4 weeks around that time. It could have been somewhere a little bit less, but about 3 weeks. And I didn't want to go back because I just thought it was a waste of my time at that point. But I was encouraged to come back because, I guess other people saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And once I started back, I know how to get a job. So I started working at an appliance store, delivering refrigerators. And then I went to the repair section, all still maintaining that, getting up 4 o'clock in the morning.
Still training. Yeah.
And then working during the day, and then going back to practice from 5 o'clock until maybe 7:30, 5-6 days a week. So it was a pretty tough schedule, but I knew at some point that if I wanted to make it, giving up was an answer.
Yeah. And like how many years were you in that period of like working and whatever job you could get and training? How many, like what was your idea there? Like just waiting to get recruited again from our university?
Yeah, because when I got denied, that scholarship offer got wiped off the table. So I literally had to start over again. And I worked that job for about a year and a half, maybe just a little bit less, but roughly about a year and a half. I just kept my head up. I still kept competing at Carifta meets and CAC meets, and flying off the pen relays and different other little small junior meets. But the main thing that I wanted was to get off to university. Lo and behold, this was like in November of 2003, a little small school called Cayman College out of Muskogee, Oklahoma sends me an offer. It was a 51% scholarship. I had no clue where Muskogee was. I just know it was an offer, and that was the only one at the table, and I was taking it. Like, this was it. I was going. So in January time of 2004, flew back to Jamaica, stood in front of the officers again to try to get the student visa, and the guy stamped my passport, and he's like, good luck out there. And I was like, am I approved? He's like, yeah, good luck out there. Do your best. I almost jumped through the roof, and I was like, yes. So, to tell you what that felt like, it was, I can't put that into words. You just finally know after all of these years of sacrifice, it has finally paid off. And about a week later, boarded the plane, and a young Caribbean kid out of the Northside district of the Cayman Islands, and you landed off in Muskogee, Oklahoma, to Cayman College.
And that was the only place that you've been outside. You have been outside the Cayman was Miami back then, still, right?
Yeah, Miami, and I think I went to New York and Philadelphia for the pen relays. But say, out down south, Midwest, I had no clue what it looked like. Yeah. So landing there, temperature difference, culture difference. I went there with an idea or a preconceived idea of what, college was supposed to be like. You see it on TV where, people are in the front lawn, throwing footballs, and sorority houses and
That
people
part.
walking on campus having a good time. And when you got to Bacon, it was just like, well, this isn't it. But it was the opportunity that I had long searched for, and I was destined to make the best of it.
No, and I mean, how was your first couple of weeks there, like the first month in Bacon? I mean, how when you get to the track was not in the best condition, right? If and what was that transition like from just to getting to a whole different a new place and
Yeah,
nothing that you expected?
it was a unique transition. I call it that. You had to get used to the temperature difference. At that point, the coldest that I've been was my short visit to Penn Relays. But at that time, in the first week or two, it dropped to like 30 degrees. I think 20 in one day, and I was like, oh man, this is like I'm a kid from the Caribbean. This is not like who would live in a place like this. But I had to suck it up, and that was just that. Getting used to the team. Everyone had a different personality. Coach had a different methodology of coaching. You just kind of just let the ego go and try to accept everything that is around you and try to make the best of it. So it took me a week or two to kind of settle in. And after that, you just apply the same fundamentals that you had from home, which is, working hard and taking practice serious day in, day out, and continued on from there.
Where did you live in Bacon, like in
It,
Oklahoma?
it was on the campus university. It was on the campus apartments.
Okay.
I can't remember what the name of them called, but they were basically called the apartments. So
They were like sort of dorms or like they're more
yeah, it was a sort of a dorm type feeling where you had more like a pod where you had, I think it was like 4 rooms. I had my own room. So luckily, I didn't have a roommate experience until later on in my collegiate career. So
in Muskogee, Oklahoma, right? That's the name of
yes.
it. And how was the track there? I mean, compared to I mean, you trained in your track back in Cayman at the Edward Powell. No, what was it? The Truman Bowden Sports Complex. Sorry, and then transition to the track in Muskogee. How was that the difference?
It was just obviously it was outdoors, but the track that we first trained on was it was pretty good. It wasn't like the best out there, but it was pretty good. The unique part of that story was once I was in Bacon, I flew back home during the summer months, and I got a phone call about maybe 3 weeks before the second semester or my second semester was about to start. Once I got that phone call, it was pretty much disturbing news. The coach at that time, Coach Kevin Gordon, was gone. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I just knew that he was gone. I think it was something, regarding, his contract negotiation around that time. But anyway, I was just informed that he was gone. So I was reluctant to go back. I didn't want to. I didn't want to be put back in that situation of training by myself again and having to make up my own workouts. And that wasn't something I wanted to do. So once I just literally said, you know what, just suck it up and go back. I went back for my second semester. Sure enough, Coach Kevin was gone, or Coach Gordon was gone. And unlike my first semester, I didn't have a track. Definitely didn't have a ride to the track at this point. So we had to use Muskogee's high school. They had an old beat up asphalt track on the back. Like we had to hop a fence and, walk through a grass pasture of some kind just to get to it. And it was definitely not the ideal track. It didn't have anything. It had grass growing out of it. Didn't have any hurdles. I had to hop in a garbage dumpster and take out the hurdles that they were throwing away so I could have something to use.
Oh no.
And yeah, it was not the ideal situation to be in, but as I said, it was all a unique part of the story, and I just call it just a part of my destiny.
Yeah, it's part of it's part of what got you to your later success. No, it was part of the process and going through all this, and it's unique. Like some people have it really like comfortable, but having these struggles, maybe it's how you learn. So
For
no,
sure.
No.
Yeah.
That's and then like, so you were there second semester there, and you were still competing at international level. You competed another carifta while you were in college, or how was that? How was your international competition, or besides the collegiate career?
Yeah, you competed, generally like in some of the meets that were local. You definitely competed at the NAIA level, and that was my last year of Carifta, which was very successful. It took me 5 Carifta games to get 1 medal. I mean, I prized that medal, God knows. But in between that time, something special happened. It was during that summer month, we went to De La Cruz, Mexico, and for the CAC games, and I ended up getting bronze in the 400 hurdles that year. Uh, the morning we were about to leave, the coach from Florida International University, Coach Steve Rubin, uh, somehow got his card from my coach and stuck it in my wallet, thought nothing of it. Got back to Bacone, and the whole situation happened of having no coach. And during one day, I just literally sat down and said, man, this is not how my collegiate career, I pictured it to be. Like, this was definitely not how I intended it to go. So I just decided, hey, just throw caution in the wind, and I would send this guy an email to see, probably he's looking for recruits and, probably needs a 400 hurdler. Sent him an email off, went to class, came back 15 minutes later. Sure enough, there was a reply, and sat there, read it for about maybe 10 seconds. And at the bottom of the email, it said, I can offer you a full scholarship to Florida International University. I almost fell off the chair. And I'm like, I was like, man, this is unreal. But I had a few obstacles standing in my way. I had a outstanding balance that I had to pay to Bacone. And on the very last day of the deadline, I had to get that bill paid, or else the scholarship offer was off the table. Sure enough, I contacted my dad about a week before that, a check that he was owed. He DHL'd up the check, and about maybe 15 minutes before the registrar's office closed, down the street comes the DHL truck. I left practice, dropped my practice gear, hopped the fence, ran through someone's yard, cut the DHL truck off, and the guy hands me the envelope with my check in it. Ran to the registrar's office, sweaty and, with grass hanging on me. But, I turned it in about 15 minutes before he was about to go, saved the offer. And in January of 2005, I made the transition into FIU. So on a full scholarship.
Wow, just the timing couldn't be more perfect. Like, it's like,
Yes.
no, no, wow.
That was a very strange time, but as I said, it was all a part of, I guess, part of my destiny later on. So.
And 2004, that was 2005 when you transitioned. I mean, well, 2004 to 2005. And 2004, so something happened in your home country in Cayman, like the Hurricane Ivan hit as well.
Yeah.
So it was a year with a lot of a lot of happening, no, in your life, and then this happened, or how was that?
I was nerve-wracking at first. Once we knew that the hurricane was obviously on a path to come very close to the island's borders, and once it was confirmed that this, we're not going to avoid this. This is going to be bad. My mother called me about 3:00 that morning, sitting in my dorm, asleep in my dorm room. She had a crazy message. Ron, if we don't hear from him again, we love you. Beep, dial tone. I didn't hear from him I didn't hear from anybody at home, especially my parents, for about 2 weeks. I didn't know if they were alive or dead. And finally, my dad called me about maybe 2 weeks afterwards, and he's like, no, everything's all right. The house got a little bit of damage, but the island looked like Godzilla played a 5-on-5 on it. Like the island is completely destroyed. So said, luckily, before the hurricane came, we were on a building project because he does construction, and a check that was owed had come through, and that was the check that he DHL'd up to me to pay that outstanding balance, so I could get that scholarship offer for FIU down on paper.
Just out of curiosity, like when he told you about the check, it was like the same day it was the deadline, or it was one day before? When was like how long before the payment deadline there?
Once Coach Ruben sent over the paperwork to say, this is what it is, but you have to get this balance taken care of, I immediately called my dad and, said, this is how much I owe. Obviously, I owed it anyway, but he had to speed it up a bit so that the scholarship offer didn't get wiped off the table. So he said, this is when I can DHL. This is the fastest I can get it out to you. Once I get it out to you, I'm going to make sure it's guaranteed to be there in 24 hours. Sure enough, he was a man to his word. And as I said, 15 minutes before the registrar's office closed, that check came in that DHL truck. And trust me, I could not be a happier person. So
it was like destiny, no? Like that's kind of like whatever, like maybe it was meant to be like that, perfect timing again.
Yep. Perfect timing. Yeah. It was just, that was a meant to be moment right there.
No. And I mean, from other important point there that you remember telling me is that you used to do 400 meters, right? Hurdles. You were not doing 110 back then, or how was that in when you transitioned to FIU? How was that transition?
In my junior years in the Caribbean, we had what you call 100 hurdles. So it is at the 36-inch height, obviously 100 meters. And once you got to the under 20 level, which is at the second, basically at the more senior level of the CRIF Games, which is, as I said, a junior meet, you go to the 110 hurdles. Obviously, the height goes up, the distance in between the hurdles gets a little bit, a tad bit, longer. But as I said, I was not a talented person. I really didn't have that, speed, and I didn't have the best technique out there for sure. So not being able to make that transition over to the 110s, Coach Williams said, well, you already know how to hurdle. So why not just get you strong and, have you compete in the 400 meter hurdles? And I said, that's what I got recruited to Bacone College for. And that's initially what I got recruited to Florida International University for, from, as I said, the coach team at the CAC Games. And once I got to FIU, it was a completely different world. It was definitely, a better place to be than Bacone, no disrespect to the school. And once I got there, had to, readjust to the new way of life, I guess, that was Florida International University.
D1 school.
This coach had this crazy idea that he wanted to take a shuttle hurdle relay to Penn Relays that year. And out of the 5 guys in the team that could hurdle, period, I was one of those that he said, come to practice. I just want to try you for the 110s. And I was like, all right. And literally had 2 hurdle practices, not 2 weeks, just 2. And just lo and behold, he says, hey, you're going to be running the 110s at the Miami Hurricane Invite this weekend. And I was like, no, I just practiced twice. He's like, yes, you are. You'll be fine. Nothing's going to happen. You'll be fine. And I just walked away. I was like, this guy has to be out of his mind. Sure enough, the race went off. I survived. And 2 weeks later, he throws me back into the race again. This time, however, I ended up running the fastest time in the team. Of all the guys that trained on that
let me clarify, squad. This is D1 school. Like, this is like NCAA college level. It's not just a competition. Just
the best. It was a D1 level.
Yeah.
So at that time, I just kind of looked at it as like, well, I guess, okay, well, I did okay. And by the end of that first semester there at FIU, I ended up getting down to, I think it was like a 14:28. And at that point, I knew, okay, I might be onto something. Like, I could definitely get better at this. I've just been practicing it 4 months. So let me just take my time and see where this ends up.
Yeah. And how was that? I mean, you got the fastest school record, 14.5, right? And then this was 2006 when you were still at FIU. And then what was your career? How did your career look after that? With
Well,
like
from 2006, I ended up running. I got hurt a bunch of times, and you know, slowly but surely, I kept getting sort of better. But as I said, I was injured a lot. And then in '07, I became conference champion in the 55 hurdles at the Sun Belt Conference. And right after, literally 20 minutes after winning the conference title in the 55-meter hurdles, I blew my groin out. So I'm out for the year, and I could barely walk at that point. I'm coming back through the airport in a wheelchair. And I decided I had to forfeit the outdoor season of my 2007 year. And luckily, another part that I didn't tell you was that at Bacone College, when I first got there, for some reason, my grades from home was not transferred over into a GPA system. So they had no way to tell that if I was eligible or not. Having to sit down for weeks on end so that they could get this grade thing sorted out, I ended up having to forfeit my first season at Bacone. So I only competed at the outdoor season. I had to leave the indoor season alone. Fortunately enough, having an indoor season left and an outdoor season left to make that 2008 year was just something weirdly enough that came together again. And in 2008 was where everything changed. Everything.
what happened? What happened then?
In 2008, it started off. Where do I draw this back? In 2007, right after that conference, the outdoor conference, which I was a part of the team, but I was just driving the van back and forth to bring the rest of the athletes to the track. Once we got back to campus, we realized that they tore the track up. So the track was completely ripped up. There was caution tape all over the place and barricades, and we had no facility now. So at that time, my coach that I switched over to after Coach Ruben left, who initially recruited me, his name was Coach Eric Campbell. We had to take this little shuttle bus that we call Big Bertha, pack the hurdles in it, drive to Miami-Dade, throw the hurdles over the fence, set the hurdles up, practice, throw them back over the fence, put them back in the van, and get out of Dodge before anyone knew we were there.
That was you at that point, it was the second time that basically at a college level, you come, there's no track. So you had the experience there. You had that built resilience there for you for this time. Probably you were the experienced one. Okay, no worries, I got you. I know how to deal with this.
Yes. It was that was like a really rough time, but it was fun. Like he made it to actually be like, we laugh at it nowadays to think how crazy that was to be at an NCAA level school or NCAA Division I school, and you're throwing hurdles over the fence just to get a practice in. And I'm looking at all these other teams, and I'm like, man, you guys don't have to do any of this. You have guys to set your hurdles out. You have 3 or 4 uniforms. You don't have to do squat to do anything. You know, we didn't have a weight room. It was like some racquetball courts that we had that somehow got transitioned into a makeshift weight room. I'm in there slanging and banging the weight and just trying to get the workouts in. I'm making up my own weight room workouts, and it was just complete freestyle. And lo and behold, as I said, 2008 rolls around. Of all the hopping fences and throwing hurdles over and everything else, we decide, okay, the first meet is going to be at LSU, and we go to the LSU meet, and somehow it was a great idea to have us fly the same day we're about to compete. So we land there, sped off to the school, got there 15 minutes before the race goes off. I'm tired, stressed out over the plane ride, and hopped on the line and ties the school record with a 7.98. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, all right, well, whatever. It's the school record. Who cares? And we went back to practice like nothing ever happened. 3 weeks later, I show up to New York, and everything in life that I've ever known completely changed. We show up to the Armory, and I knew it was a heats and finals meet. So, you have 2 chances to run. And they somehow during the course of warming up, they had a delay in the race schedule. I warmed up past the point of just being ready. Now I'm tired. Hop out the blocks. I run a 7.91 and I'm angry. Like I am fuming. I'm foaming from the mouth at this point. I'm angry because I know I know I could do better than that. My coach asked me, "Hey, Ron, what do you think you could run?" I was like, "Well, maybe like a 7.77." And he was like, "You think you could run that fast?" And I was like, "Yeah, I feel that good today." Time to warm up perfect. Went back, warmed up again, and I got on the line with a vengeance. Like it was like, okay, here we go.
That was
Gun pops off. I get out to the first hurdle, and it was like my body literally came alive, and it said bye to everybody else. And I crossed the line, didn't know what time it was. I just angrily turned around and walked off the track. And everyone's trying to figure out what time it was. My coach asked me what time it was. I didn't know, didn't care. He went off to check, came back about 10 minutes later, and he had the biggest smile in his face. Like I'm talking about like the Grinch. And he was like, "Ron, man, guess what time you just ran?" And like we discussed earlier, I said, "Well, I don't know, maybe like a 7.77, somewhere around there." I know it was faster than the prelims. And he's like, "Ron, you just ran 7.68. That right now is the fastest time in the nation, and you're in the top 10 hurdlers in the world currently." And you're kind of like, huh? And I just let out the biggest woo sound you could possibly think of. Like I said, that's a feeling. You feel that in your soul. You fought for all of these years.
You felt that day. You said,
yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And you're trying to figure out how, or I say, I'm trying to figure out on the train ride back to the hotel, how did I just go from 7.98 to 7.68 in an hour and a half? Like, who does that? And you're just saying, like, man, I could barely scrape off a conference title. Now I'm one of the top 10 hurdlers in the world, and I'm the leading person in the nation. And you're trying to process it all. And as I said, you're looking back to all of those days when you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is the payoff. This is when it's all coming together in the most crazy year of your collegiate career. You're still out there hopping fences and throwing hurdles over the fence and taking a bus that breaks down in a way that you got to push it, fill it with water, put oil in it, and a bunch of crazy other stuff. And there you go. The best moment of your life thus far has just happened.
And that's like it was kind of like all the moments that you went through. I mean, since the visa denial or even before, like it was brewing for this moment,
Yes.
Like good things take time. And yeah, like that was 2008. And there were some Olympic Games coming that year, and you with this time, I guess you were close to qualifying, and you qualified for Beijing Games. That was your first Olympics, or how was that, Ronald?
Once you got from indoors, I ended up going to NCAA Nationals and running a 7.58. That put me definitely in that year. I think it was top 15 in the world, and definitely smashed all the school records that we had. And moving into outdoors, our first meet was at University of Florida. We went there and I ran a 13.67, if I remember correctly. Now, at that time, I knew that the B standard to make the Olympic team, which I was the only hurdler from the Cayman Islands, I had to run 13.72. You just watching, you crossing the line, you looking up at the scoreboard, you see 13.67. I'm like, man, I just made my Olympic team. But the wind was too strong, or the wind wasn't legal. So I'm like, man, well, at least it gave you an indicator that you can run that time. Like you ran it out there by yourself. So I fought and fought and fought until the very last, my very last meet as a collegiate athlete at the NCAA Outdoor Championships in Des Moines, Iowa. And in the semifinal round, I ended up running 13.63 for a new school record, a new national record, of course. And this time the win was legal. On that day, even being injured, it was something said very special happened, which was I made my Olympic team. That was something at age 14 you could never tell me that I could do. I didn't think that was ever possible. And lo and
You had a
behold,
name
you're now
for,
an Olympian.
you said you have a name for to go to college. No, that was your dream. You
Yeah,
never dream of going to the Olympic Games.
never, never, never. Like, to me, that was so far out of the way that, yeah, you always, I guess I always thought that, yeah, you're going to be looking at those people, but you're never going to be one of those people. And all of a sudden, here you are sitting down in the middle of Des Moines, Iowa, and you're like, well, all right, I'm off to Beijing. And yeah, on that day, when everybody home heard of it, especially the people in the district of Northside that have watched me grow from a young kid to, the athlete that I am. And they were like, you're talking about like Ronald that used to ride by here on a bicycle, him? It was like, yeah, he just made the Olympic team. And people are like, that is unreal. Like, man, that is a good thing. And so many people came out and gave me so much support. For that, to this day, I still, humbly thank them that, they trusted and believed in me. And knowing what you have, the district support you have on you going into Beijing, when the plane landed, I'm like, I'm here for a purpose. I'm not just here because, I struck out or lucked out on something. This was something that obviously I was destined to do at some form, sometime in place in my life. I was destined to do this. So, yeah, landed in Beijing, and that was my first Olympics, and that was a whole unique experience in itself.
What was the like from the time you qualified to the Olympic Games? What was the time frame there? What was between?
It
How,
was
how
about
long?
it was about a month or so after qualifying. So in the finals of NCAA's outdoor championships, I ended up having a stress fracture. That left me unable to train, unable to hurdle, unable to run, and I'm stressing out, thinking, how am I going to get to Beijing and compete? Luckily enough, all of the rehab work that I was doing paid off, and about maybe 3 weeks before the actual race, it it quieted enough down to the point where I could train and just get through practice how I needed to. And once I got over there, over to Beijing, I had some very intense practices to get done. Like, it was literally no room for error. It was every practice had to count at that point. And I got over there, and they bestowed me with the honor of having being the national flag bearer in the opening ceremony. Took that with great pride, and executed that to the best of my ability. But
Let's pause there. Sorry to pause you there, but this is something that I think it's worth getting into detail.
yeah,
I mean, of course, being the honor of carrying the flag from your country. I mean, in that span of time as well, like 1 month, you didn't know that you were ever gonna make the Olympics. Then you make the Olympics. Then you're carrying the flag, and then you are at this stadium at the Bird's Nest in Beijing, beautiful stadium, with a packed stadium, and just walking around. What's the feeling? And I ask these questions to all the athletes that we've interviewed. The feeling of walking into a packed stadium. I mean, of course, you have the energy going when you said you were gonna run the 777 and then you run the 768. What was the energy that you had in your body at that time when you were marching on the stadium?
I get asked that question all the time. What was that feeling like? It's hard to put into words. You come to the state of realization where it's everything you've done in your life, especially regarding sport, has now come down to this one moment. This is a moment that many people, definitely from where I'm from, rarely get to experience, if ever. And all of the sacrifices you've done, all of the sacrifices that other people have done for you, have all come down to this one moment. You're walking into that stadium, and you're hearing the roar of the crowd. You're definitely hearing the music playing and the lights flashing and everything else. And you're carrying your country's flag. That's a major honor, because you're not just representing yourself. You're representing something greater than yourself, your country. And once you walk into the stadium and, they announce the name, the Cayman Islands, and you're looking around and you're saying, on every tier of this stadium, they have about roughly 30,000 people. My country is at that time was roughly about 50,000 people. I'm seeing more people in this place than I got in my entire country. And so it's a lot to take in at one time. You try not to be distracted by all the lights and everything else, because you're still remembering why you're there. You're not there to parade around. You're there to compete. That is it. So having that in the back of my mind, you're simply just trying to take everything in, but it's a surreal moment. You're excited. You're nervous at one point. You have a lot of anxiety at one point. Then you're relaxed, and it is a complete mixture of emotions. But it was one that is said I will cherish that for the rest of my life, for sure.
And like, you're at a world stage, like,
Yes.
yes, like people from all over the world are watching. And I mean, the stadium too, it's from people from all over the place. And as you know, like, Cartan is the official ticket seller in a lot of countries for the Olympic Games, including Cayman Islands. I mean, for those people that are thinking of going to the Olympic Games, I mean, what do you think would be like the description, like in one word, of being in a stadium? Leave aside an athlete, of course, that's a whole other level. But as a fan, you feel that energy as well. Being at the Olympic Games. What do you think? How would you describe that?
Well, based on that, I would encourage anyone that is thinking about going to the Olympics, whether being an athlete competing in one, and definitely being a fan in the stands. I would definitely encourage someone to go, not just to watch it on TV. That is all good and fine. We appreciate that, but you don't quite get that same. You don't quite get that same experience when you get there and you're sitting in the stands and you're hearing the roar of the crowd. You're feeling it move. This is an energy that is happening, and you're sensing and you're observing the sheer scale of what it takes to make the Olympic Games happen. What you see on TV does not do it justice, plain and straight. It is a massive undertaking to host the Olympic Games. And you're seeing people that are everywhere from from officiators to reporters to definitely the athletes. You're hearing moms screaming in the crowd. You're seeing coaches yell. It is so much that is happening. And, for you to sit there and watch it on TV, it simply doesn't do it justice. So I would encourage anyone that has never experienced the Olympic Games, especially from an athlete's point of view, where you're down there competing in the stands, competing on the track, or, in your sporting venue in the sporting venue of your particular sport, I would encourage them to go.
Yeah.
Find the ticket, find the time, make the time available, and go. Trust me, you will not regret it.
No, thank you for sharing that, because I second that. And you gotta go to the Olympic Games. I mean, it's, of course, watching on TV, it's great, and you can feel the emotion there too. But being there at the Olympic Games, exactly like you described it, you see the whole production behind it, and you see how sport brings everyone together. As cliche as it sounds, but it's like that. I mean, through the sport, you're bringing all the world together. You have a thing in common. It's sport, and sport is so powerful. And thank you for sharing that.
You see countries that have went to war with each other in the past. Like, blood has been shed between those two countries, and you're seeing one person from another country that, as I said, has been the other one's arch rival. We come together in a peaceful competition where you're there to compete as athletes. There's no wars here. There's just competition. That is it. So the Olympic Games in itself is a very special moment, not just for the athletes, but for the greater sense of world peace. It is, in my opinion, the greatest example of that, where people can come together, create a special moment where all differences aside, you create great memories.
And it's all through the platform of sports. And I mean, I've said it multiple times in other interviews, but the perfect example of what you just described is in Winter Olympics 2018 in Pyeongchang, when the two Koreas marched together, North Korea and South Korea. That's a
Yes.
perfect example. So.
Yes, for sure. So as I said, all differences are put aside, and you are competing for the greater sense of the greater objective of world peace. So that is one of the things the Olympic offers, besides many other things.
Yeah. No, and yeah, as Olympic Games, World Cups, but Olympic Games are very special, very unique,
For sure.
and especially also because they happen in one city. I mean, World Cups, it's a really good event too, but it happens in many cities, a whole country. But the Olympic Games happen everything in one city, and you have multiple sports, so it's pretty unique.
Sure.
Going back, sorry for the parentheses there, but I think it was important to say that.
Let's go.
But going back to your story, Ronald. So 2008, you marched the opening ceremony, being the flag bearer for Cayman Islands. And how was the experience at the village, at your first Olympic Games, competing especially in that stadium? How was that?
It was great. Said you got to experience the sheer scale of what it takes to make the Olympic Games happen. That's everywhere from housing to transportation to volunteers to language translators and everything. Everything, you're just taking it all in. It's a massive undertaking. In that particular Olympic Games, I ended up, of the 4 rounds that the hurdles had, which is heats, quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, I made it to the quarterfinals, and was eliminated out of the round. But as I said, I gave it the best shot that I could. At that first round, I ended up running 13.59, which was a new national record. So I walked away, somewhat, having somewhat of a success. Definitely had what it took to make it further on from that, but it just didn't work out that way at that particular Olympic Games. So once my purpose at the Olympic Games was technically over, which was my actual competition, you're just trying to take in the culture of the country. You're taking in the other sports that are there with you, going to check out their venues, seeing, everyone from Michael Phelps and everybody else that are walking around that you only see on TV. And you're just really trying to take the whole experience in, because you don't know if there's going to be a second one, or there's going to be definitely a third one, or a fourth one, or a fifth one. Sometimes the Olympic Games for certain athletes happen once in their life, and then that's it. They never have another one. So I made sure if that was the only Olympics that I was going to, that I was just going to try to take it all in.
And that's a motto, not to just live fully. You never know what's gonna happen. And well, the Olympic Games. No, it's being at a Olympic village, as you said, sharing the village with all these other athletes that well-known athletes, and too, it's I guess it's a very unique story. And from Beijing. Did you ever think that you were gonna be ready for 2012? Did you finished Beijing, and then you went back to you were still in college, right? After Beijing.
No, I graduated right before Beijing happened. So
okay.
Now I was technically quote unquote a professional. Once Beijing was concluded, and I flew back home to, I guess, just spend some time with my family. Our government helped us out with it's a program that they have to fund certain athletes that have made it to the highest in their sport. And they offered me a contract which involves funding to go off and to pursue the professional aspect of track and field. And once I signed that contract, I basically signed up for, the next 4 years of trying to make the London Olympic team. And once I signed that contract, I had established contact with a very well-known and very famous coaches, in my opinion, out there, a very knowledgeable coach in Orlando. His name is Coach Brooks Johnson, who trained at that time several other elite hurdlers, one in particular, David Oliver. He had been the Beijing bronze medalist. So, David is the real deal. And I knew exactly, what he was capable of doing. And, having that opportunity to go off and to train with other elite athletes was something that, I was blessed with, and I was going to take seriously and make the best of it. So hopped in the car that I bought with some of the money and, headed off to Orlando to enter into that new phase of that other phase of life, which is professional track and field, where, like we discussed, is completely different than collegiate track and field. It's a completely different world out there. I think that catches a lot of collegiate athletes by surprise, where you get out there and it's just like, all right, you're thinking, you're still in that college mindset where, you have conference and you have several meets that are basically lined up for you. You have basically everything done for you in a sense. You simply have to show up to class, get your work done, show up to practice, compete. That's it. In the professional world, it is different. You are out there not just fighting for some, measly conference title. You're fighting for your livelihood. Out there is you mess up on a race and you're coming back home to an eviction notice. You can come back home to no checks. You can come back home to cancel contracts. You can come back home to a lot of things if you're not performing as you've been contracted to do. So it's a completely different world out there. And once I got to Orlando, that was thoroughly explained every single day. They did not ease up at all. They let you know what it is and what it's about every single day in every opportunity that they could.
So it's the pressure. But I mean, it's better, no, that they say to you that way, because then you affront reality. Because when you affront reality in a way, like, this is it. And I mean, that's the responsibility of being a professional athlete too. People see it, oh no, these guys, well, it's really easy for them, they get sponsored, but it's not. I mean, there's a lot of pressure there to perform. And
it is.
It
is. Definitely is. Especially when you're competing or when you're training on a daily basis with some of these guys. To say, Dave, the hurdle crew that was there at the time was David Oliver, you had Joel Brown, you had Aubrey Herring, you had Tiffany Ross Williams training in the group. You had several other elite athletes out there that would come down every now and again to visit and to train. So you're competing with guys that you're going to eventually line up with in a competition scenario. And, it is, no one gave anybody a break, because in competition, no one is going to give anybody a break out there. So if you have, like I had the opportunity to train with, at that time, David was the best in the world. It was no denying that. Like, he obviously had dipped under 13 seconds several times. So each day what he was coming with. He came with a different mindset, and he let you know, I'm not giving you anything. If you're going to get something from me, you're going to have to literally take it. And I'm not going to allow you to take it. So you were forced to be a better athlete every single day.
What was he doing differently? What was his mindset or
mindset? David had a different mindset. It was clear that this guy was different. When he got out there, you knew that he didn't, from the very get-go, he hated practice. He did not like to practice at all. That's strange coming from a guy that's, in my personal opinion, is one of the greatest hurdlers in history. He did not like to practice, but he was a fierce competitor. This was a guy that had a ferocious appetite to win. There was no other way to put it. If it was getting up in the morning and cooking an egg, he had to cook his faster than yours. If it was pumping gas, it didn't matter what it was. He had to win. That was the only way he saw things. It was like, I have to win. And you had to respect that, because he said, Forbes, I was like you at one time. I was fresh out of college, broke and, trying to figure out where my life was going. And the only way I figured out how to be successful in the sport is to win. and I have to do what it takes to win. Whether that is go out there and run till I puke my guts out or whatever it takes, I will do it. It, you know, obviously of legal means, but David was a fierce competitor. I think his mindset set him apart from everything else. He had 2 legs and 2 arms like everybody else, but his mindset was clearly different. That guy was just different.
That's I mean, that reminds me of Michael Jordan mindset, you know,
Yes.
that the documentary that got just released this year, Last Dance, and yeah, I remember you watched that documentary as well,
Yeah.
right?
The
But
Last Dance.
The Last Dance, yeah, that's Michael Jordan. I mean, what you're describing David, but that's also that mindset. You know, he always wanted to win as well, even in training, like always in practice.
Yeah,
But
practice. You know, they would talk smack. It was a very productive type of atmosphere, especially in the presence and the being under the mentorship of Coach Brooks Johnson. It was, you know, they discussed even the language that they spoke. It was just they mentioned terms and mentioned subject matter that you never hear about in college. Every day was something new that you learned. It was something new to write down. It was something
for
new to
example, what was a term
experience.
that they were speaking that you didn't understand in college? For example, what was the conversation there?
They in college, especially at FIU, it was just me. So you could go from just talking about, you know, conference titles to NCAA, just stuff of that level of conversation. When you got to Brooks Johnson's group, he explained to you the facts. He explained to you the science of what you were doing. You could go from talking about ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, to something relating to the civil rights struggle. You could have a range of a range of subject matter in one conversation. But everything that he spoke about and everything that they would discuss it in detail and how it would relate to the sport and how it affected the sport. And as I said, it would be this 15-minute sit down before every practice, and you were expected to write it down, and not just write it down, but apply the knowledge of which you were being a part of the conversation. So it was a completely different world than what I was used to. And as I said, you were forced to be a better athlete. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah. But then you think that was I mean, you had a lot of stages of growth, but professionally, like as an athlete, you think that was the stage where you had the most growth, and at that time as an
I would
athlete?
say so. Definitely from the intellectual standpoint of someone explaining to you exactly what it is you're doing, exactly how it is to get better. You're in the presence of athletes that say that have done way more things than you've ever done in your career. And they're explaining to you what it takes to compete, what it takes to win on a level that you've never experienced before. And you're literally trying to take all of this down. So that gave me a great insight of what that next level to being the super elite was all about. And nothing else that, as I said, that I've experienced in my life thus far compared to it. Definitely nothing else. So that was a very dense, that was a very specific time where it was a lot of learning compacted in a very short period of time. So that being said, man, I take some of the lessons even up to this day, and I still apply them from that specific timeline of my career.
No, like being surrounded by that people, it's what makes you like grow too. That's the thing. And I mean, from then, so you were in Orlando, and then you kept training. You competed in world championships too when you were in Orlando, or
No, in Orlando, unfortunately, I got hurt in January. I think it was the 7th of 2009, and I blew my hamstring out. You know, before I even got to my first competition, I blew out my hamstring, and um, I ended up, you know, just kind of hanging around where I was there at practice, but I was unable to do many of the things that would allow me then to compete. At the around the time of the U.S. trials, right after that, I decided to move back to Miami to train with my collegiate coach, Eric Campbell, or my college coach, Eric Campbell. And let's say left professionally, we both agreed, it was a professional decision. Still have a very great relationship with those gentlemen, Brooks Johnson and David Oliver. And when I moved back down to Miami in 2000, and at the later part of 2009, it was based on the fact that Coach Eric Campbell got me to I guess my best at that point. So sometimes you move back to familiar territory that got you to be the person who you are, and that was the reason for me moving.
And so you went back to Miami then, and Coach Campbell, you started training. And what year was this in? I mean, how far were you from London 2012 Olympics? How was that?
That would be about 3 years. So you were in 2009. Obviously, 12 is 3 years away. So, London was definitely part of the plan that I wanted to make happen. Was to make definitely my second Olympic team. But obviously, in between that part, or in between, the Olympics, you have different regional games. You have different European competitions. You definitely have the World Championships, indoor and outdoor, within that time. So all of those things you have to, or is factored in to how you train, when you train, where you train, and so on and so forth. So London was, as I said, the main thing that I wanted to shoot for. But to make the World Championship team that year, it was in Berlin, I think it was 2009. I definitely didn't end up making that team because of injury. And, I had Commonwealth coming up in 2010 and World Championships coming up in 2011. And obviously London then would be in 2012. So, yeah.
And then during this time of practicing, you were fully committed to track and field still, despite the injuries. You never give up. You said, "Okay, I'm gonna continue," and your aim back then was to make the Olympics. Still, like you said, "Okay, no matter what happened, I have the injuries, but I'm gonna make it to the Olympics." I mean, different than before when you qualified for Beijing, and you never imagined that you would have go to the Olympics. At this time, you kept practicing, and besides injuries, you made it to the 2012 Olympics as well.
Yeah. Before that time, I ended up making it to the 2011 Outdoor World Championships, which was in Daegu, South Korea. I'd moved back, and several other things happened before that where I moved away from my collegiate coach, and I got with the coach that I still have to this day, who is Coach Joey Scott. And Joey took me from a very troubling time in my life of having a family tragedy to put me back on my feet and getting me down the path of competing at my best again. And when I moved under the coaching guidance of Coach Scott in 2011, I ended up making the first World Championship or World Outdoor Championship team that I did in my career, which was, as I said, in Daegu, South Korea. I ended up being at those particular championships. I ended up being a semifinalist in the 110 hurdles. I think it was like 2 or 3 spots out from making the finals, but it is what it is.
Okay, and then 2012 Olympics. You finished that era, and then you kept practicing towards the 2016 Rio Olympics, and then another injury happened, correct? And how was that transition again from 2012 to 2016? Again, you kept focusing on, okay, I'm gonna make it to the third Olympics, or what was your mindset back then?
It was after I made it to 2012, I ended up competing in, say, in 2011 and making the 2012 team, because for our country, we don't have a national trials of sort. We have where they choose who's going to go or you qualify to go, basically. Let's say we don't have a national trial. So once I ran fast enough in 2011 to make the 2012 team, I'd already qualified for London 2012. Starting off in 2012, everything is going great. I'm injury free, and I'm jolly and bouncing all over the place. And then all of a sudden, around December, January timeline, I started to develop a stress reaction to my foot. Like, I can tell my foot is hurting every single day. I don't know why. I'm going to doctors, $100 there, $500 there, continuously getting checkups and trying to figure out what this problem is. And the doctors at that time that I was seeing, for some reason, they just couldn't find out what it was. I ended up making the 2012 World Indoor Championship team, which was in Istanbul and in Turkey, and ended up going over there and didn't make it out the first round, which was highly disappointing because I was like, man, I know what I can compete at. Like, obviously I've done this before. Like, I've made a world indoor team before, and obviously I didn't go because that was 2008. And once I left Istanbul and flew back to the States, I figured out that I had a stress fracture. So that then caused me to be out for 8 weeks of being in the boot and waiting for that to heal. And then I could probably get back onto, the mission at hand, which was London 2012. Once I got back on my feet, started to train, I ended up going down to Jamaica trials to compete, to try to get as much races as I possibly could in at that point. And in the warm-up at Jamaica trials, blew my groin out. So now I'm in trouble, and I know I'm in trouble. And did as much therapy as I possibly could, because at this point now it's one race before London. And going into London, I definitely did not feel confident. I just knew that I had to go out there to compete, but at that point, injury after injury after injury, it took its toll. And I was definitely not, in my personal opinion, the best shape I know I needed to be in to compete, where it would make a difference in I guess the end result of what happened in London. So going out there, we arrived in London. It's a little bit different than Beijing. Not only my confidence is not quite where it should have been. And once again, you're trying to take, the whole atmosphere around you in what it is this time, to just kind of not be the flag bearer, but to be the one that's, you're watching all the lights and the sounds and everything else. But your main mission at hand, as I said, for anybody who's there at the Olympic Games, is not to be there to just simply parade around. You're there to compete. And we did the best practices we possibly could, got everything that we possibly could get in right before race day. On race day, get out there and, just going to make it do the best that I possibly can do at this point. And gunshot off, got all the way down to the 9th hurdle, and going into the 10th hurdle, hip collapsed and ended up pushing down the last hurdle and literally just screwing the whole race up. And went across the line completely disappointed. It was not a pleasurable experience at all. And I simply just wanted to just get away from London. Like, it was not definitely how I definitely didn't plan for the Olympics to end up going like that in London. So with that experience behind me, the sole purpose of what I was doing at that point now shifted then into, let's just say, if I could make it to 2016. And flew back to the United States, took a little break for about a month or two, and then resumed training to go into 2013. In 2013, I ended up getting back into a really, really great shape. And I said, I'm shooting now for Moscow at the World Championships outdoors. And in the middle of that season, this was somewhere around April, May of that season, I just come off of running a 13.31 at a Claremont meet. I know the effort it took. I know how my body was feeling. Everything is looking great. I'm smiling, and my body's getting in better and better shape. And 1 week after running that, I'm at practice having a recovery workout, of all things. and off of the corner, we were just simply just running some 250s. It was some recovery 250s at about 28 pace coming through the 200. And I just hear a snap and a very sharp pain at the back of my heel. I didn't know what it was. And day after day after day, I'm trying to run and my body would not allow me to do it. Sharp pains just shut me down. Lo and behold, I had to make the gut-wrenching call to shut my season down. It was about 10 months, and I'm going from doctor to doctor, from Miami to Boca, from Boca to Naples, from Naples to Texas. I'm flying any and everywhere, trying to see doctors. I'm seeing one after the next. Everybody's telling me, Ron, you have Achilles tendonitis. It'll take, X amount of time to heal. And everything that I tried didn't work. I was in, 2 sets of air cast boots, 2 sets of crutches, different topical treatments, meditation, dry needling, everything under the sun. Nothing worked. And at that point, I got called home to a meeting with my government, and they wanted answers. They've seen me compete, but obviously not for a period of several months. And I didn't have an answer to give them, except that I was trying to, get back on my feet. Knowing that I tried everything I possibly could at that point, I went home the night after that, the day right after that meeting, and I drafted my resignation letter. I was done. At that point, I didn't know what the solution was.
It was what year?
That was 2013. No one knows about that except obviously myself. So I just drafted my resignation letter because I didn't have a solution. Any plans to make it to 2016 that was, so far out of the way. I was just trying to just get back on my feet again. And lo and behold, I went to see, the doctor that basically put me back on my feet, which is Dr. Anthony Gallia
in Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah.
And after hearing all of these, different opinions of me having to get surgery and, my career is over and everything that could literally just take the wind out of you, he comes up and he says, you don't have Achilles tendonitis. I don't know what those other doctors have been telling you. You have a tear, but I can fix this. It's going to take about 6 weeks and you should be, back on the road to trying to run, in your career again. That right there, I just let out an exhale that it made you feel the weight of the world was off of your shoulders.
And that was how many days or months before the 2016 Olympics?
That was in 2014. So okay. I would have had 2 years then.
Also 2 years. Okay. Yeah.
2 years then to compete, to try to make it to 16. Getting back on my feet in 14, I ended up struggling tremendously to try to regain some type of momentum in my career and try to get back on my feet again. I ended up making the Commonwealth team, going over to Glasgow and running, I think it was like 13-8 or something in the Commonwealth Games. It was definitely not the most productive Commonwealth Games I wanted to experience in my career, but I was just so grateful to be running again. Then we fast forward to 2015. I went back home, and in my contract, they had a stipulation at the bottom of the page that stated that I had to make at least the World Championship qualifying time by the ending of June, July, somewhere around that time.
This was a contract with the government in Cayman, or?
Yes. Okay. I had to make that qualifying time. Otherwise, my funding was not going to be up on the table for reinstatement for funding, basically that. So at that point, my career would have technically been over because I would have had no way of funding it. I put every single bit of effort in my body within my capability to get back to not only where I was, but to surpass that. Because at this point, I have to. It's not an option at this point. And in 2015, I kept chasing that time with 13.47 to qualify again for the World Outdoor Championships and to save my contract. I get down to the final chance, which was a meet in Switzerland called Le Champ de France. And it was called the Resprint, if I can remember correctly. And in the first round, I run 13.72 or something. And I'm like, man, this is terrible. I got one more race, or otherwise than that, my career is over. In the final, literally mustered up a spirit that said, I must. I have no other backup option at this point. Pistol goes off. I'm out of the blocks first, and at the third hurdle, I clearly make my separation. And coming off the 10th hurdle, I dip at the line for dear life. And, every athlete is always anxious to see what time they ran. So I look up at the clock, and it's like, sheer disappointment. It says 13.50. And I'm like, man, I got this close, that close, and just couldn't pull it off. Sure enough, a reporter jumps out of the crowd, comes over, and he's like, hey, how does it feel to win? And how does it feel to, set a new personal best? And I was like, man, what are you talking about? I ended up running. I ended up looking at the clock again. And he's like, isn't that a personal best? And it said 13.47. And I'm like, that cannot be real. Sure enough, I said what I said to the reporter and threw my spikes down in the gutter and ran over to the next side of the track to figure out what the wind reading was. Sure enough, the wind reading was legal, and I'm back on the road again for 2016.
Wow.
Saved my athletic career, saved my athletic contract, qualified for Beijing World Championship Outdoors for that year in China, and as I said, I'm back on the road for Rio.
Well, and like, how does that contract work? Like, you made the world championship then, and it renews 1 year, or like they put you more conditions there, or how does that work?
It basically states that for someone that has made it to an Olympic level or a world championship level, that the government will assist in funding for that particular pursuit in your athletic pursuit that you are undertaking. You have to obviously maintain a good social status of, staying out of trouble, maintain, a drug-free career. And in essence, you become technically like a sports ambassador. Like, you're there to represent professionally on the world stage your country. Obviously, with that, you have to maintain a level of performance that will more or less, they can consider you world class. If you can't make a world championship team, there's no justification on them refunding you for anything, which, as I said, I had to do. Despite the injuries, despite anything, you're not paid to simply just represent. You're paid to compete. And if you're going to be paid to compete, it has to be at the highest level, which is world championships and the Olympics. So, as I said, I didn't have a choice. Despite the injuries, you still have a job to do.
Again, timing played well for you then, not just the last race, and you got nice.
The last race, last chance, last everything. Like, I finally pulled that time off. The end of the season did not, go particularly as well as I wanted it to go. But as I said, I was back on the road again after having so much time off and so many injuries, that I was back on the road again to pursue Rio 2016.
Okay, then that was Switzerland was 2015, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Around the June timeline, July timeline, somewhere around there.
And how was your path to Rio after that? I believe you got another injury, or what happened after? Please tell us.
The path to Rio was definitely a unique one, that is for sure. So I ended up having, as I said, pretty okay 2015 year. And we started out by having, obviously, the grand plan being Rio. Before Rio, I had the 2016 World Indoor Championships, which was in Portland, Oregon, or Eugene, Oregon. stand corrected.
Yeah.
And I had made the 2008 team when I was in FIU as a collegiate athlete, but I decided to forego that. And I decided to not go to that World Championships because I had too tight of a timeline between that and NCAAs. So that World Championship never happened. In 2010, I ended up going to over to Doha, over to Qatar, competed there. 2012 was the last time that I made it. From 12 until 16, I never made another world indoor team. And this time, I just didn't want to just make the team. I wanted to go there to compete very hard to the best of my ability. We literally trained twice a day, every single time that we had the opportunity to make this world championship team. I ended up running for 8 weeks total. Every single week, I'm off to Texas. I'm off to New York. I'm back in Texas. I'm off to New York again. For 8 weeks straight, I'm chasing this time. I'm literally just, time is getting down, but it's, I still have to make that team and make that time to qualify. On the final night of the final opportunity of the final race of the final round, I ended up running 7.65 and, once again, qualifying to go off to the Indoor World Championships for, which had been the third or fourth time. And I ended up sending off my information to my association at home, and I'm happy and jolly. And one thing led to the next. And the Monday before I was supposed to fly off, which would have been that Wednesday, my national association sends me an email that just blows my shoes away. It basically stated that, they stated their congratulatory remarks. Ronald, congratulations on making the team. However, due to late submission, we were put in a situation where none of the athletes who qualified to go to World Indoors were able to go. And after negotiating with the IAAF, we secured one spot, and that spot did not go to you. Sorry, you're not going to be competing at World Indoors. And you're just sitting there, and you just want the ground to swallow you. And you're like, you have any idea what it took for me to get here to this point, or to get back to this point to just competing. And it was completely embarrassing, not only to myself, but, the association at home. The president ended up resigning. I definitely didn't get to compete at World Indoors in Eugene that year. But the one thing that, did happen that was fortunate was I was in such a great shape, or one of the best shapes I was in my entire life, that 2 weeks after World Indoors didn't happen, I ended up going to University of Florida, running a 13.41, qualifying for Rio outright. 2 weeks later, ended up going to a meet in Clermont, Florida, running a 13.36. And, that 13.36 was easy. It felt easy to run that. And 48 hours later, I get off of the 7 hurdle in a race at Tropical Park, and literally my calf explodes. So fell to the ground in complete agony. I knew something was definitely wrong, couldn't tell what. And after getting checked out by the doctor, it was confirmed that I tore my calf and Achilles 85% of the way through. Like, it was.
You were at your one of the, 13. You were running 13:30s. That was pretty good. Probably one of the best times you've been running, no?
Yeah. At that time, for that period of the year, or that timeline in the year, I was like number 7 in the world. And as I said, you definitely know that I definitely knew that I could run faster than that. Like, obviously it's April, May, somewhere around that time. So you definitely have a lot of time before Rio happens to run faster. And when that injury happened, it derailed all of those plans. My goal at that point wasn't just to get to Rio, or my goal wasn't. I literally chucked that plan to the side. My goal was just to walk again. Like I said, when you tear an Achilles to that level, it usually requires surgery. It usually requires months, if not years, of rehab just to be functional again. So anyone thinking about trying to compete in the Olympics in 12 weeks is either insane or completely driven beyond something they can explain. I sought out therapy again by Dr. Gallia. Even to him, it was just like, man, the Olympics is in 12 weeks. He just had the look in his face, like, I don't know about this one.
But
You've come back from some serious injuries before, but never like this.
He always had the solution, no? This the doctor in Canada, like he always gave you good like positive stuff. I mean, of course, like the silver lining of the situation, no? Like, okay, the injury, but
for sure. It was just not that, but obviously the people I had around me, Coach Scott, the different members that we had of the True Fit Athletics Training Group, everyone came around and lent their positive support. People prayed for me. People, just went out of their way to just somehow try to get me back on the track to Rio. And I went through about maybe 10 weeks or so of just intense rehabilitation. Everything from getting into a hyperbaric chamber every morning, meditation. I went vegan for about 6 weeks, prayed, meditated, a bunch of other treatments and therapy I did in between that part. But luckily, fortunately, after about 8 weeks of intense rehab, I just threw caution into the wind one day. And I went against every single medical recommendation out there, definitely against every what every doctor told me to do, and put my shoes on, which was a pair of flats, and decided that I was going to try to run. And lo and behold, it was not fast, but it was something, put it that way. And a week later, I tried to go over a very small hurdle. That was successful. My Rio race now is in 3 weeks. I have no idea how I'm going to go through 10 hurdles at this point. None. And we fly off to Rio. I'm now the flag bearer again. I'm getting back into the stadium. If my self-confidence was at a low if my self-confidence was a little low going into London, it was definitely way lower than that going into Rio. Like, at this point, I had no idea how I was going to pull this off. So day after day, we're steadily making a little bit of progress, getting over a hurdle, only God knows how. And the night before I was scheduled to compete, we scrapped the race. At that point, I tried going over 3 hurdles out of the blocks. My leg was simply like a wet noodle. It was flopping all over the place. It was weak. I just couldn't do it. No matter how much I tried, no matter what we tried to adjust, how we tried to mentally prepare, it just wasn't getting done. And we scrapped the race. No one else outside of me and my coach knew about that. And went back to the village, fully accepted to, taking the media backlash from home. Met my coach and the team coach in the hallway. We decided that we're going to give it one last practice. Went down that evening, and we were successful. I made it over 3 hurdles. Yippee. And we decided, hey, well, it is what it is at this point. If, you decide to somehow not want to compete at this point, it's too late. You have to do this. Night of Rio comes around. As I said, I'm not paying attention to any type of environment around me, what the Olympics is like. I'm just simply focused on getting over 10 hurdles. We get into the stadium. I warm up. We go into the underground. I check in, said a quick prayer. I was like, man, just please make this be successful. It starts to rain. I mean, a downpour. And I'm like, it can't get any better than this. It just can't. We walk onto the track. I look down the lane. I see 10 hurdles. And I'm like, I'm really about to do this. Like, I can barely make it over 3. And now on an Olympic stage, I'm going to attempt 10. Being as injured as I am, being as uncertain as I am, this is what I'm about to do. We line up. Pistol goes off twice. The Frenchman beside me false starts. My nerves now are, at this point, I'm like, hey, man, it is what it is. I line up again, and pistol goes off. I'm over hurdle 1, over hurdle 2, over hurdle 3. At this point, I'm counting the hurdles as I'm going down. I was like, okay, make it to the next one, make it to the next one, make it to the next one. 8, 9, and 10, I'm over the last one, and I run through the line. And miraculously, my Achilles held on. How? I don't know. I guess that's one of those God things right there. Like, I can only attribute that to
Spirit.
God.
I mean, it's similar to your story when you qualified for the World Championship in Switzerland. No,
Yeah,
like
it was just, I don't know how I did that. It just happened. I just chalked that up to the higher force. And yeah, I definitely did not run any time fast. I didn't come last, but I ultimately, in my mind, I was successful because, as I said, who attempts to run an Olympic race 12 weeks after hearing they're blowing their Achilles apart 85% of the way through? And to actually go out there, compete to the best of your ability, survive it, and you walk away knowing you did the best you could do. As I said, at that point, having a gold medal, I was just like, look, that would be a tremendously great feeling. But at this point, just the fact that I made it through this finish line and was able to compete and give a genuine effort on behalf of my country, being in the condition I was, that was
that was your gold medal. That was your gold medal, basically. No, just to finish the 10 hurdles.
that was my gold medal right there.
Yeah.
It was just to finish. As I said, you have flashbacks of your Achilles tearing apart again, and if you tear it again, that is it. Like, it is going to affect the way you walk for the rest of your life, because you're going against every doctor recommendation. You're going against every medical protocol. No one in their right mind would suggest you do that, but
yeah.
You survived it, and you made it through. As I said, it was a successful race in terms of just making it over 10 hurdles, and yeah, was not the fastest, but as I said, at that point, that put a smile on my face that I was able to at least compete in my third Olympics. As I said, it wasn't the best, but I don't know any other person out there that would have tried that.
And I mean, you had a lot of hurdles in your life, and
Yeah.
and
That's a good way to put it.
And your story is a story of resilience and inspiration too, because I mean, you had multiple injuries, and you were really close also of not getting funded again from your government. And your story in college too, that you came back, you didn't have a track, you were taking the hurdles out of the trash, and FIU as well. Like, if you just rewind and go to, you see, like that's it's kind of like comparing to the hurdles race that the discipline that you compete in. It's your life is kind of like a hurdles, like a competition in a way, and I think that's an inspiration. And I mean, thank you, Ronald, for sharing this. I mean, I want you to share with your boys now. I mean, what message would you like to give to like young athletes, or even just regular? I mean, all people are normal. I mean, even athletes, I mean, are normal human beings, but people that go in a day-to-day life as well. Like, we all have our own hurdles in life. What's your message again that you want from your story that you like to communicate to the world?
My message is a message that is pretty simple. It doesn't matter who you are out there. It doesn't matter if you've been blessed with the silver spoon or the wooden spoon from the time of your birth. It does not matter your skin color, your sexual orientation, your religious beliefs. You will face tough times in life. On some scale, on some in some fashion or in some sort of a way, you will face uh, tremendous tough times sometimes in life. The only way you're going to make it out of those tough times is you have to simply ride on faith sometimes. Not everything out there can be explained. Not everything out there is going to be a cut and dry answer on this is the path, this is the only way, this is set in stone. Unless everything goes correct, this is not going to be possible. Sometimes you just have to rely on faith. Sometimes you have to go at things, whatever they should be, whether it's a personal goal, whether it's a goal that you're simply displaying a function in, you have to go at it with every single resource within your capability. And you have to go at it knowing that giving up simply is not the answer. If there's one thing I've figured out in life so far, is that not everything that you're going to be in pursuit of out there is going to be guaranteed. That is for sure. But one thing I know that is for sure, that is, if you give up on something, you're never going to get it. That is 100% guaranteed. Of all of the things that we say that are not guaranteed in life, that is the one guarantee that I know from personal experience. You're definitely not going to get it if you give up. Who knows what it's going to be like if you continue trying? I would rather keep trying to at least stand that 1% of it being a success than to give up and to be guaranteed that 100% of me never getting it. You have to trust in God. Sometimes that's the only answer. Sometimes there's no other explanation for what happens in your life. Sometimes there's no other way out. You can't explain it. You can't quantify it. You simply have to go out there and to compete in everything that you do, whether that's on the track, whether that's off the track. And most of all, believe in yourself. People around you are going to believe in your abilities. They're going to believe in your dreams. They're going to believe in just entirely just you. But no one knows you better than you. No one can have a stronger conviction to whatever you want to pursue in life more than yourself. So when you go out there, regardless of what it is, whether it's on the track, whether it's involving a sport, whether it's just sometimes day-to-day living, you have to put your best foot forward and simply trust in the process. That is my message.
And thank you, Ronald, again for being here. And yeah, again, it's really inspiring what you went through, and congratulations. I mean, 3-time Olympian, and with all the hurdles, and you're now where you are now. And again, thank you for sharing your story with us. And I'm sure that it's gonna change a lot of people's perspectives in lives, and it's gonna help them go through any hurdles they get in life. And thank you, Ronald, for being here with me. And
anytime. I hope this message reaches someone who is going through a very difficult time, especially in this time of COVID-19, and it gives them the strength to continue forward.